The text for this evening comes from also the Gospel of Matthew. We'll read verses 27 through 30 in chapter 27. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they stripped him, and they put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and put a reed in his right hand, and kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him, and took the reed, and struck him on the head. They thought it was hysterical. This Galilean peasant pretending to be a king. Well, they just cracked him up. So they decided to have some fun with this apparent delusion. So the soldiers began by taking away his clothes. He had to stand there naked as they mocked him. And then they found a beautiful scarlet robe, and they put it around his shoulders. There, now he's beginning to look kingly, they joked with one another. You know what is missing? We need a crown. And so one of them thinks up a crown for this peasant king from Galilee, a crown to teach him a thing or two about his silly daydreams. A crown of entwining thorns. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. They smash the crown down upon his head, and the thorns bite and the blood pours, and he still stands there. His response is not what they had hoped for. He is silent to their taunts, to the mockery, and to the jeers. So someone comes up with another missing item. A king needs a scepter. And they scrounge around and they find a reed and they make his right hand take it. And then they step back to admire the finished product. Blood running down his face from the thorns, cruelly piercing his head. His naked body barely covered with the red scarlet robe, and a flimsy reed that flops this way and that in his hand. Behold the man who would be a king, they say. And laughing with scorn, they fall down upon their knees. Oh, your majesty! Oh, hail the King of the Jews! And still, he just looks on in silence as their mockery turns vicious. He will not play along with their game, so he will pay. And they begin to spit on him to show their utter contempt for this deluded upstart. And they take the scepter and they whip his head with the reed. Some scepter, some rule, some kingdom. You are nothing, and you are about to die. And it will not be easy. You wait and see, you King of the Jews. And as he looks on them, what these men miss is the depth of his pity for them. For these who would wound him with mockery, who try to shame him, and who are preparing to torture and to murder him. Look into his eyes, though, and you will see it. A depth of pity and a fountain of love that will shake you to your core. It is a mere human trait, that is common to all of fallen humanity, to love your friends and to seek to do them good. But to love your enemies? To have nothing but pity and compassion for those who taunt and who jeer at you and who are preparing to kill you? That is the mark of a heavenly friend. That is the mark of Jesus Christ. What language shall I borrow to thank thee, dearest friend, for this thy dying sorrow, thy pity without end, as we sang in the 5th verse of our hymn. Limitless pity, no end to it. The look of pity from the face of the mocked king extends not only to his torturers, but also to the entire human race, which is complicit in his death. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, he would just say a few hours later. Of course, the truth beyond all truths is that Jesus actually is a king. The king promised to the Jews, yes, Jesus is the long-awaited Son of David. But even much more, he is the King of the Gentiles as well, and their ruler. And he is the one to whom the entire universe belongs. Every one of us, including those who mocked him and who shamed him, owe their existence only to his will that we exist. You will never ponder the passion aright until you remember that a single thought from Jesus could have undone all of those who sought his death. A single thought could have destroyed us all. But in that highest provocation, what he returns is love and mercy and pity. But that is what fills him. That is who Jesus is. And this is how he reigns as king above all kings. He rules in love unconquerable by hate. For you see, Jesus is determined to share fully in the lot that we have chosen for ourselves. We were destined to sit on thrones of glory and to be robed in majestic garments and to wear crowns on our heads. Such was what God wanted for us. That is why he created us in the first place. But we threw it all away. And we embraced instead the path of suffering and death, of loneliness and pain. But he would not have that be our end. He came to walk that path as king, so that through his sufferings all that we lost might be restored to us again. Jesus is stripped that our sinful nakedness might be clothed in the bright robe of his righteousness. He wears a crown of thorns that we might wear a royal diadem. He is beaten and mocked so that we might be welcomed and treasured. Love incarnate will overcome all hatred and mockery and remain loved in a way that would be open to us to return from his misery of sin and death into the kingdom the Father has planned for us since the beginning of time. Jesus walks that way, that suffering way, in kingly fashion. And none of the mockery can take from him his majesty, his glory, and his grace. He does every act of his passion and burning love for the fallen race of men so that we might be restored. And he chooses to lay down his life so that we may live with him and live in him. Such love on his part then begets love on ours. And that's why we sing together the last part of that verse. Oh, make me thine forever, and should I fainting be, Lord, never, let me never outlive my love for thee. So behold your King. Beneath the spit and the blood and the blows and the eyes that look on you with tender compassion, and cry out for you, child, for you and for you and for you, for love of you, that you might live with me forever. Amen.